What time do you think it is? You're nothing but a glorified maid. You should have at least made my dinner before checking yourself into the hospital. The voice echoing from the smartphone speaker instantly froze the air in the delivery room. Enduring the excruciating pain of a contraction, I crouched on the bed. But my husband, yelling on the other end of the line, had no way of knowing at that moment that his arrogant words would be the trigger that completely destroyed his own life just a few hours later. We were in the maternity ward of a large hospital in Manhattan. The wide ceiling and the cold, sterile smell of antiseptic stung my nose. Breathe in, breathe out. I gripped the bedsheets tightly, enduring the violent waves of contractions that crashed over me every few minutes. My name is Mia. I am 30 years old. Inside my swollen belly, a new life was just about ready to cry out and enter this world. The clock on the wall had just passed 7:00 p.m. Normally, this would be a time for a husband and wife to encourage each other and share the miracle of a new addition to the family. But my husband, Trent, 35 years old, was nowhere to be seen. Ah, it hurts. A pain so intense it felt like my pelvis was shattering forced a silent scream from my throat. Cold sweat soaked my skin, making it hard to even regulate my breathing. In the midst of this absolute limit, the only thing that crossed my mind was the cold, callous sight of my husband's back as he walked out the door of our luxury condo that morning. Hey, where are my dry-cleaned shirts? Are you still not done ironing my backups? When my water had suddenly broken and I crumpled in pain, Trent had just looked down at me, clicked his tongue, and spat those words. I'm sorry, but the contractions are getting— Oh, stop exaggerating. Women have babies every day. I have a massive pitch today. You think I have time to babysit you over a stomachache? I couldn't say anything back. Married for 3 years, Trent was an elite executive at a top-tier investment firm. As the days passed, his emotionally abusive behavior had only escalated. Who do you think puts food on this table? You just stay home and do the chores. Like a good little maid. That was his favorite thing to say to me. Having become a stay-at-home wife, I was expected to manage every aspect of his personal life perfectly. If there was a speck of dust on the floor, he would scream at me. If a meal wasn't exactly to his liking, he would dump it straight into the trash can right in front of me. Even so, I held on to the faint hope that once the baby was born, he would gain a sense of fatherhood and return to the kind man he used to be. I kept my silence and just endured it all. But reality was far too cruel. On the very day of delivery, while his wife was in agony, he cared more about the wrinkles in his shirt than me. In the end, fighting through the pain, I called an Uber myself and headed to the hospital alone. Ha. The nurse was gently rubbing my lower back, but an unfathomable wave of loneliness and anxiety washed over me. The intervals between contractions were getting shorter. Just as we were about to move to the delivery room, the silence was shattered by a loud, obnoxious ringtone. It was my smartphone on the side table. The screen lit up brightly with the word, husband. Mia, it's your husband. Can you answer? The nurse asked kindly, but I couldn't even reach out my hand through the pain. I can't. I can't even speak right now. Just then, the door to the room burst open with a loud bang, and an older man rushed in. Panting with large beads of sweat on his forehead, it was my father, George. He was 65. He had driven for hours from upstate New York to be by my side. Mia, you're doing great, sweetheart. It's okay. Dad is here. Just as my father rushed to my side and tried to take my hand, the phone rang loudly again. Ring, ring, ring. Looking at the screen, my father frowned deeply. Trent. At a time like this. Unbelievable. Mia, I'll answer it. You just focus on your breathing. Saying that, my father picked up my phone and pressed the answer button. Before he could even bring it to his ear, Trent's eardrum-shattering yell blasted through the speaker. What time do you think it is? The sheer unreasonableness and violence in that voice made my father stop dead in his tracks. The nurse gasped in shock. Trent, firmly believing he was speaking to me, hurled even worse words. I just walked in the door. Why isn't dinner on the table? You're nothing but a glorified maid, and you can't even do your one job right. Stop faking the pain to slack off and get your ass home and cook. A husband venting his anger over his missing dinner, while his wife is literally risking her life to give birth. The moment he heard those words, a terrifying aura of pure, icy rage radiated from my father's back. Usually my dad was a mild-mannered man, the kind of gentle father who had cried buckets of tears at my wedding. But the look in his eyes right now was sharper and colder than anything I had ever seen. He slowly brought the phone to his mouth and spoke in a low, rumbling voice. You've got a lot of nerve, boy. I could hear the sound of Trent gasping on the other end of the line. My father was trembling with a quiet fury. The atmosphere in the room was so unnervingly tense that for a split second I almost forgot the pain of my contractions. The gears of fate for me and my husband were about to drastically derail. Mr. Miller, why are you there? Trent's voice from the phone cracked, clearly shaken. It was a pathetic reaction. Hard to believe it came from the same arrogant man who had just been screaming and calling his wife a maid. But my father George's anger was not something that could be easily quelled. Why am I here? My daughter is putting her life on the line to give birth. It's common sense for a parent to be here. More importantly, Trent, what exactly did you mean by what you just said? My father's low, piercing voice echoed in the room. I lay there, enduring the waves of contractions, listening desperately to the exchange. Part of me wanted to say, Dad, it's okay, don't fight for my sake, while another part complexly wished, tell him off, give him hell. After a few seconds of silence, Trent let out a dry, forced laugh, trying to regain his composure. Oh, haha. It was just a little joke, sir. Mia's been getting a bit lazy lately, so I have to be strict with her or she slacks off on the housework. It's just training, discipline. Discipline. The word pierced my chest like a knife. To Trent, I wasn't a beloved wife. I was just a poorly performing subordinate, a tool meant to serve him. When we first got married, Trent was the Wall Street elite that everyone envied. He graduated from an Ivy League school and worked aggressively at a massive consulting firm. At first, he was sweet, smart, and charming. Even my parents were thrilled, saying he was almost too good for me. But it only took a few months after we signed the marriage license for him to show his true colors. It started with small complaints about how I cleaned. Gradually, it turned into character assassination. You have no real-world experience. You need to realize you're being a parasite on my income. Before I knew it, I had become a shadow living every day, walking on eggshells around him. A joke. You call my daughter a maid and tell her to come back and cook, and you think that passes as a joke. My father's voice grew louder. My dad was old school, a bit clumsy with words but possessing a strong sense of justice. He valued family above all else. For a man like him, Trent's remarks were absolutely unforgivable. Look, let's be real, Mr. Miller. Women back in the day used to give birth in the fields between harvesting crops. Mia is just being dramatic. Besides, I have a massive $100 million presentation tomorrow. Are you saying I should pull an all-nighter holding her hand and ruin my performance at work? That would be irresponsible. There was not a shred of remorse in Trent's voice. If anything, he was proudly flaunting how valuable his job was, looking down on my father, who he viewed as an uneducated blue-collar worker, as someone too low-level to understand. Trent, are you being serious right now? Dead serious. I'm not from your outdated generation, sir. I'm highly rational. Mia's one job is to support me so I can deliver peak performance. That's her way of paying me back for the expensive lifestyle I provide. At that moment, the shock and sorrow were so overwhelming that a sob escaped my lips. Trent, is that really all I am to you? I managed to croak out. The reply from the speaker was freezing cold. Mia, you listening? Look, just shut up and do your job supporting me. Running to your daddy to tattle on me just proves how low class you are. That's exactly why your father is stuck running a pathetic little construction crew and will never amount to anything. What did you just say? My father's hand was shaking with rage. Trent wasn't just insulting me. He was insulting my father. My dad runs a small local general contracting business upstate. He's a self-made tradesman who worked his way up from the bottom. From the perspective of a slick Manhattan corporate elite like Trent, he might seem like an unrefined, insignificant existence. But to me, he is the proudest, greatest father in the world. Listen, Mr. Miller. I've got a networking dinner with clients to get to. I'll just buy a stakeout. Mia, hurry up and pop the kid out and get your ass discharged by tomorrow morning. My laundry is piling up. Throwing those final words like garbage, Trent hung up. The sterile electronic beep of the disconnected call echoed hollowly in the room. The nurse was too stunned to speak, just continuing to silently rub my back. I'm so sorry, Dad. I couldn't tell you I was being spoken to like this. The tears wouldn't stop falling. The despair tearing my heart apart was worse than the labor pains. The family I had so desperately wanted to build was nothing but a house of cards. My father quietly placed my phone on the table. The expression on his face had completely transformed from his previous explosive anger. He was now as eerily calm as the bottom of a deep ocean. Mia, it's okay. You don't have to endure anything anymore. His words made me feel saved, yet simultaneously gave me a strange, chilling sensation that something terrifying was about to begin. My father slowly pulled a different smartphone out of his jacket pocket. He seems to think I'm just a useless, washed-up tradesman. I think it's time I taught him a lesson. The person my father called was someone connected to a side of him that even I knew nothing about. Yeah, it's me. Move the schedule up on that matter. The target is Trent. The chilling command that left my father's lips. Who exactly was my father? And what was he going to do to Trent? Swallowed by a violent wave of contractions, I was certain of one thing: the countdown to Trent's total destruction had just begun. Yeah, it's me. Move the schedule up. The target is Trent. My father's quiet voice, laced with an unfathomable menace, made me gasp even through the pain. Dad, who are you talking to? I managed to squeeze out my face, contorted in agony. But my father immediately returned to his usual gentle smile. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Just asked an old buddy to run a background check. He gently stroked my hair. His hand was warm with the thick, calloused roughness unique to a tradesman who had spent decades on construction sites. Another fierce pain assaulted me. It was almost time to be moved to the delivery room. All I could do was grip the sheets and endure. I couldn't even form words anymore. I was facing the greatest physical pain of my life all alone. And right at that moment, ring, 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 that merciless ringtone echoed through the room again. The screen displayed husband. He was the one who had hung up on us. My father immediately snatched the phone and pressed the answer button in silence, leaving it on speaker. Mia, where the hell is my silver tie clip? What came through the speaker wasn't a word of concern for his wife's health nor an apology. It was an irritated voice demanding the location of his accessories. I told you it's my lucky clip for tomorrow's pitch. I can't find it because you didn't organize my drawers right. Answer me. Faced with this utterly self-centered screaming, all I could do was close my eyes in despair. Since I couldn't speak, my father answered for me in a low, frigid tone. Trent, are you seriously calling to ask about a tie clip while your wife is risking her life enduring labor pains? Trent clicked his tongue loudly on the other end. What is it, the old man again? Put Mia on the phone. You're useless to me. I told you she can't come to the phone. She's in no condition to speak. So dramatic. It's just a stomach ache. My tie clip is infinitely more important right now. Trent's voice was dripping with obvious mockery. I guess a bottom-feeding paycheck-to-paycheck day laborer like you wouldn't understand, Pops. For elite corporate players like us, our appearance is our lifeblood. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars moving tomorrow. Mia's one and only job is to support me flawlessly. The fact that she can't even do that proves she's a completely incompetent woman. Incompetent, you say? Yeah. A glorified maid who's just dead weight. Guess it's a reflection of how poorly you raised her. Oh, well, she was born to parents with no education or class, so I guess it can't be helped. It was the ultimate insult. He was treating not only me but the father who had worked his hands to the bone to raise me like absolute garbage. Tears of absolute frustration streamed down my face. I wanted to yell back. Don't you dare make fun of my father, but due to the intense pain and extreme stress, my throat could only produce a raspy, wheezing sound. I could only cry and remain silent. But my father didn't explode. Unlike earlier, he didn't yell back. He just asked a question with a coldness that felt like treading on thin ice. An elite corporate player, huh? You're right, I'm just a humble guy running a small contracting firm. Glad you finally get it. So put her on, but Trent, what would you do if the very foundation of your elite status was already crumbling beneath your feet? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Trent snorted, laughing derisively. The pitch you mentioned, putting your career on the line for tomorrow. The Apex Coastal Resort Development Project, wasn't it? The moment those words left my father's mouth, I could feel the atmosphere on the other end of the line freeze solid. I could clearly hear the sound of Trent sharply drawing in his breath over the speaker. How? How do you know the name of that highly classified project? Trent stammered. I never discussed the specifics of my work with Mia. Well, you know how it is. Us bottom-feeding laborers hear all sorts of rumors. Like the rumor that the point man for that project has been putting some seriously disgusting illegal pressure on the subcontractors. Trent's arrogance vanished in an instant. Why would some hick construction dad know the top-secret name of his firm's biggest client project? And worse, why did he know about the dirty extortion tactics Trent was using behind the scenes? Hey, Trent. My father's voice dropped an octave, carrying a heavy, terrifying weight. It wasn't the voice of the gentle father I knew. It sounded like the absolute authority of a man ruling at the very top of a massive empire. I'm looking forward to your pitch tomorrow. Try not to let the rug get pulled out from under you. Wait, Mr. Miller, who the hell are you? My father mercilessly cut off Trent's panicked voice and ended the call. Barely breathing, I looked up at my father in disbelief. His back looked larger and somehow more terrifying than I had ever seen before. What exactly was moving in the shadows far beyond the knowledge of me or my husband? All right, Mia. Forget about that worthless excuse for a man. Right now, you just focus on the life right in front of you. A sharp light glinted in the depths of my father's eyes. The cold, sterile lights of the delivery room beat down on my face relentlessly. Deep breaths, Mia. In and out, the obstetrician's voice echoed, sounding like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. The contractions were less than a minute apart now, my body dominated by a tearing agony unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life. It hurts. Dad. Standing beside the delivery bed, my father gripped my sweaty hand with immense strength. His thick, warm hands calloused from years of working with lumber on construction sites, that warmth was the only thing anchoring my fading consciousness to this world. In the midst of this extreme situation, from my bag placed in the corner of the room, that cursed ringtone sounded once again. Ring, ring, ring. Persistent bastard. Harassing a hospital like this. My father frowned in deep disgust, pulling the smartphone from my bag. The screen, of course, read husband. My father pressed the answer button and silently put it on speaker. Instantly, Trent's shrieking, panic-laced voice sliced through the tense air of the delivery room. Hey, what the hell did that mean earlier? Put that old piece of trash on the phone, Mia. On the other side of the line, Trent was in a complete panic. The mask of the charismatic, charming elite he wore for the outside world had completely peeled off. All that was left was an incredibly ugly man who cared only about saving his own skin. Are you listening to me, Mia? Did you show my project files to your white trash dad? I asked if you, a useless housewife, went snooping around in my home office. Blinded by pain, I couldn't possibly formulate a reply. I just shook my head violently side to side. I had never once set foot in his home office. In fact, he strictly forbade me from entering it for anything other than vacuuming. Taking my silence as an admission of guilt, Trent's verbal abuse escalated. You ungrateful bitch. Who do you think lets you live in a luxury Manhattan high-rise and eat 3 meals a day? I'm an Ivy League elite who took pity on a high school-educated carpenter's daughter and picked you out. Of the gutter, I bit my lip, staying silent. My throat was so tight I could barely draw breath to scream. The verbal blades thrown by the husband I had once loved and married were shredding my heart to pieces, hurting far more than the physical pain tearing through my flesh. Picked you out of the gutter. White trash. He truly, from the bottom of his heart, looked down on me and my family as garbage. I don't know where or how your old man heard the name of that top-secret project, but I know it's just a bluff. He probably just overheard some hard-hat-wearing grunts complaining. He's 100 years too early to try and blackmail me. A barrage of classist insults and shallow threats poured from Trent's mouth. The nurses and doctors in the room were speechless at the cruelty, glaring at the smartphone with grim expressions. Listen to me, Mia. If my presentation tomorrow is negatively impacted in any way, you'll pay for it. I'll file for divorce immediately. And don't even think about getting a cent of alimony. You can take the brat in your belly, crawl back to your dad's shack, and live in poverty for the rest of your life. The brat in your belly. That was what he called our precious child. In that moment, something inside my heart snapped and completely crumbled away. This man had no right to be a father. And no right to be a husband. Is that all you have to say? Gripping my trembling hand, my father, George, spoke in a voice as cold as ice. Oh, you're still listening, old man, listen up. Society's bottom feeders like you have no place interfering with elite business, Trent. You are making one fatal misunderstanding. My father cut off Trent's shouting with a quiet yet absolute sense of intimidation. You think I heard rumors from a subcontractor? No. Wrong. What? The Apex Coastal Resort Development. Have you ever bothered to look up who exactly is the chairman and founder of the Apex Group, the primary contractor and your firm's biggest client? What, Pathetic gasp leaked from Trent over the phone. The Apex Group. It was a name everyone knew, a massive American conglomerate, a titan that controlled a massive chunk of the nation's real estate and development economy. It couldn't be. Even I looked up at my father's profile in disbelief. It's about time. Look forward to tomorrow morning, boy. I'll thoroughly enjoy snapping that arrogant nose of yours right off your face. My father ended the call for the second time, and this time he powered my smartphone down completely. The delivery room regained its silence. All right, Mia. The time has come. I've shut out the noise. Give me a healthy grandchild. Simultaneously, with my father's words, the greatest contraction yet assaulted my body. Nin. I summoned every ounce of strength I had, focusing entirely on the battle to bring a new life into the world. And as the long night finally broke, the morning of judgment, where everything would be overturned, was rapidly approaching. The hands of the clock passed 7:00 a.m. The seemingly endless night gave way to dawn, and pale morning light filtered through the small window of the delivery room. But to me, that light didn't feel like a sign of hope. Ha. Ha. Over 10 hours had passed since the labor pains began. My stamina had long since breached its limit, my consciousness hazy as if covered by a thin film. The waves of pain were growing more intense, yet my dilation was barely progressing. My face was a mess of sweat and tears, twisted in agony as I just kept panting heavily. I didn't even have the energy left to cry out or scream curses at my husband. "Mia, stay with us. The baby's heart rate is dropping a bit." "We're putting an oxygen mask on you," the nurse called out urgently, pressing a cold plastic mask to my face. "Baby, I'm sorry. Mommy doesn't have much strength left." As my consciousness faded, I desperately spoke to my child in my mind. My father, George, had been called out of the room by the concerned doctor to discuss the next steps, leaving me alone with the overwhelming pain and isolation. It was exactly at that moment. "Mia, I am so sorry, but..." A young receptionist rushed into the room looking frantic. She was clutching a cordless hospital phone. "Your husband has been calling the hospital's main line, repeatedly screaming at the top of his lungs. He says you turned off your cell phone and it's an absolute emergency and we need to patch him through immediately." I felt the blood drain from my face. An emergency? Did something happen to him? With trembling hands, I reached out and took the phone from the nurse. 8. The moment I whispered in a raspy voice, Trent's screaming voice threatened to burst my eardrum. "Are you kidding me, Mia? Why the hell is your phone off? What exactly was the emergency?" Fighting through the pain, I braced myself for his next words. "My Cole Haan dress shoes, I've told you 1,000,000 times to shine them and leave them right by the front door. Why the hell were they put away in the back of the closet? You just made me waste 5 whole minutes looking for them." His dress shoes. That was the absolute emergency he had harassed the hospital switchboard over while his wife was hovering between life and death in labor. "Listen, because you were making such a huge dramatic fuss about it hurts last night. My whole routine has been thrown off. I told you today is my $100 million pitch to Apex Group. My entire career is on the line." I couldn't say anything. The sheer selfishness, the total lack of even a shred of love for me, it completely shattered my mind. Silent tears just spilled over my cheeks and fell to the pillow. "Listen to me very carefully. I am at my limit. A bottom-tier woman who can't even do basic household chores is not fit to be my wife. When my pitch succeeds today and I get my promotion as a senior partner, I'm having you sign divorce papers immediately. Go crawl back to your white trash dad with that kid." Trent unilaterally fired off those words and slammed the phone down before I could even reply. The dead electronic beep echoed hollowly in the depths of my ear. I can't do this anymore. My mind had completely reached its breaking point. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, the fetal heart monitor next to me began blaring a frantic warning alarm. My extreme stress and despair had reached the baby in my womb. The baby's heart rate was plummeting rapidly. "Mia, no, stay with us, doctor. Doctor, get in here now," the nurse screamed, and the delivery room instantly plunged into panic. My consciousness rapidly drifted away, my vision fading to pitch black. "I'm sorry, baby. Just as I was about to completely let go of my consciousness, the doors banged open and my father rushed in, his face pale. Seeing the blaring monitor and the phone slipping from my lifeless hand, he seemed to instantly understand everything. "Trent." The sound that escaped my father's throat was a low, terrifying rumble that sounded like an earthquake. He enveloped my freezing hand in both of his and shouted powerfully into my ear. "Mia, do not give up. Do not let go of your lives for a man like that, Dad. Dad will settle everything. I promise you." Meanwhile, in a premium skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan, dressed in his finest tailored suit, Trent stood before the doors of the top-floor executive boardroom, a triumphant, arrogant smirk on his face. That stupid bitch. Probably crying her eyes out right now. Whatever. Starting today, I'll be reborn as a true master of the universe. Trent adjusted his tie, brimming with confidence, and pushed open the heavy mahogany doors. The room was deathly silent, lined with executives from his own firm. But the moment Trent's eyes landed on the person sitting in the seat of honor, the seat reserved for the chairman of the Apex Group, all the blood vanished from his body. Wah! The thick stack of presentation files slipped from Trent's hands, scattering across the floor with a loud thwack. Waiting for him there was an absolutely impossible figure, the man who was about to systematically destroy Trent's arrogant life from the roots up. Beep, beep, beep. In the delivery room, the relentless alarms of the monitors and the tense voices of the doctors crisscrossed in the air. Mia, push. The baby is suffering. Despite the nurse's desperate pleas, I couldn't respond. Breathing shallowly into the oxygen mask, I didn't even have the willpower to open my eyelids. The crushing weight of the words hurled at me, white trash garbage, glorified maid, swirled in my head like a curse. My vocal cords had lost the ability to even form a reply. In the deep silence, I was just thrashing at the bottom of the darkness, trying only to protect the flickering flame of my baby's life. Beside me, my father quietly stood up. Doctor, please, save my daughter and my grandchild. I am begging you. The profile of my father as he bowed deeply was no longer that of an aging, worried dad. It was the face of an absolute authority figure who had made a cold, calculating decision. My father left the hospital room and quietly stepped into a black chauffeur-driven Maybach waiting at the hospital's rear entrance. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the Manhattan skyscraper, Trent confidently pushed open the heavy boardroom doors. Smack. The next second, the massive presentation files slipped from his hands, scattering tragically across the marble floor. Wah! Why the hell are you sitting there? Trent's eyes were bloodshot. He pointed a trembling finger at the figure in the seat of honor and shrieked. Lined up in the room were all the top partners of his firm and the executives of their most important client, the Apex Group. In the dead frozen silence, the man sitting comfortably in the Apex chairman's seat was not wearing his usual flannel and work boots. He was dressed in a bespoke Tom Ford suit, his eyes radiating a piercing glare. It was my father. Security. What the hell are you doing? Throw this white trash boomer out of here, Trent, completely thrown into a panic, screamed like a madman. He's my wife's father. He's just a poor hick contractor from upstate. Did you mistake him for the janitor? Listen to me. I'm an elite partner. I am not letting some bottom-feeding garbage ruin my $100 million pitch. Throw him out, spitting as he yelled, Trent. Threw a tantrum. But the security guards at the door didn't move an inch. The air in the room was unnaturally frigid. Trent's direct boss, the CEO of his firm, stood up, his face pale as a ghost, and roared with a trembling voice. Trent? You absolute bastard. How dare you speak like that? Get on your knees and apologize this instant. What, boss? What are you talking about? Why should I, a Wall Street elite, get on my knees for a blue-collar nobody? Shut your damn mouth. You colossal idiot. Do you have any idea who this man is? The CEO's voice practically vibrated the glass walls of the boardroom. This is the founder of the Apex Group, the largest real estate conglomerate in the country. Chairman George Miller, he is the Mr. Miller, W. What? All expression fell from Trent's face. His skin turned the color of dirt. The king of the Apex Group. The guy who runs the shitty little construction crew. Looking down at Trent, whose knees were shaking so hard they were knocking together, George slowly opened his mouth. The local contracting firm, that's just a hobby of mine. You can't build good cities if you don't know the smell of a real construction site and the hard work of the people on the ground. His low, heavy voice mercilessly battered Trent's eardrums. My daughter was looking for a man who would love her for who she was, not for the title of Apex Heiresses or her trust fund. That's why we completely hid our background and she married you as the daughter of a humble tradesman. But I never in my wildest dreams imagined you were this irredeemable of a piece of human garbage. Trent collapsed into a pathetic heap on the floor. The lifeline of his career, the top executive of the massive conglomerate he absolutely could not defy. This was the man he had repeatedly insulted as white trash, bottom feeder, and garbage. The man he had literally called an hour ago to declare he was divorcing his daughter. Now then, our elite corporate player Trent. My father's eyes glinted sharply like a hawk about to snap its prey's neck. All the dirty little tricks you've been pulling behind the scenes with the subcontractors on this project, it's all reached my ears. Let's hear your excuses. Take your time. The foolish husband had touched the reverse scale of the Apex Group's chairman. Trapped in a closed room with no escape, Trent's true descent into hell was just beginning. Mr. Miller, I mean Chairman, this is all a mistake. A misunderstanding. In the ultra-luxurious boardroom, Trent, who had been acting like the master of the universe just moments prior, was now groveling on the marble floor, his entire body shaking violently. Sweat poured down his forehead like a waterfall. His perfectly styled hair was a mess as he frantically shook his head. Looking down at him from his throne, my father's eyes were as devoid of emotion and as cold as a glacier. A misunderstanding I heard directly from your own mouth as you called Mia a useless maid and referred to me as white trash garbage. Are you trying to tell me I imagined the whole thing? And no, that's not it. I just wanted Mia to be a proper wife for an elite executive. I was just using tough love to educate her. It was out of love, I swear. The ridiculously transparent excuse that tumbled from Trent's mouth made his own CEO and the other partners turn green. The realization that their firm's rising star had been inflicting unimaginable emotional abuse on the beloved daughter of the Apex Group chairman left them looking absolutely doomed. At that same moment in the maternity ward, the heart monitors clicked out an irregular rhythm. I lay on the bed, oxygen mask still attached, drifting at the bottom of my consciousness. Mia, open your eyes. The nurse patted my cheek desperately, calling out to me. But my body felt like lead. I couldn't move a single finger. Even the intense labor pains were fading away. The only thing dominating my mind was the cold, cruel voice of my husband I had heard on the phone just hours ago. A bottom-tier woman who can't even do basic household chores is not fit to be my wife. Those words squeezed my heart like a vice. I wanted to cry out. Why do I have to go through this? Why does my unborn baby have to be rejected? I wanted to unleash my anger but pushed to the absolute limit. My throat could only produce a faint wheezing. I could only lie there and cry silently. The voiceless despair was slowly chipping away at the last embers of my life. Back in the boardroom, the atmosphere had turned utterly gruesome. Tough love. What a remarkable education method you have. My father snorted in contempt, then gave a slight nod to the secretary standing beside him. Slam. The secretary slammed a massive stack of thick files onto the table right in front of Trent's nose. What is this? The shadow ledgers, audio recordings, and whistleblower complaints from the subcontractors since you took over the Apex Coastal Resort project. The moment Trent heard that the last drop of color vanished from his face, he opened and closed his mouth like a suffocating fish, his eyes locked onto the files. It seems our elite executive here has been doing some very impressive work. My father's voice dropped, carrying a pressure that shook the entire room. Threatening local construction firms, demanding they wire consulting fees into your personal offshore accounts if they want Apex contracts. And if a project is delayed even slightly, you force them into illegal overtime, telling them, uneducated blue-collar grunts exist only to follow the orders of elites like me. Does that sound familiar? That's a lie. Trent suddenly shrieked like a madman. It was the unseemly panic of a cornered rat. Those guys are incompetent. They're uneducated, bottom-feeding trash. If I didn't micromanage them, they couldn't get a single job done right. It's just like Mia. She's a useless woman who can't even iron a shirt properly, so I had to strictly manage her. Why am I being treated like the bad guy here? Trying to justify himself, Trent spewed more hideous insults, equating his wife with the hard-working tradesman looking down on all of them. Seeing this, Trent's CEO finally snapped. You arrogant son of a bitch, you're still running your mouth. Not only did you drag our firm's name through the mud, you aimed that abuse at the chairman's daughter. Just as the CEO lunged forward to grab Trent by the collar, my father calmly raised a hand to stop him. Looking down coldly at Trent, who was still trembling on the floor, he spoke. Since you insist on calling them incompetent bottom feeders, why don't we hear directly from the people you're talking about? Huh? Trent let out a stupid sound. My father snapped his fingers. The heavy boardroom doors slowly opened. The people who appeared were the absolute last individuals Trent or anyone else in that room expected to see. You guys, why the hell are you here? Trent's face warped in sheer terror. Standing in the doorway, providing a stark contrast to the tailored suits of the executives, were several men in rugged work boots and high-vis construction vests. They were the very tradesmen from the local subcontracting firm that Trent had looked down upon and forced into brutal labor conditions. Standing at the front was Stan, a burly, sun-baked man with deep wrinkles etched into his face. Stan scanned the room and let out a booming laugh. Well, Mr. Elite. Never thought I'd see you in a fancy room like this. Hearing that voice, the hideous arrogance returned to Trent's face. Bypassing fear, his anger at having his territory invaded by elements he deemed inferior, exploded. Are you kidding me? Why the hell are construction grunts on the top floor of Apex Holdings? Where is security? This is a sacred sanctuary for the chosen elite. It's not a place for filthy hardhats. Trent scrambled to his feet, spitting as he screamed. You high school dropout trash should just be happy drinking muddy water and doing exactly what I tell you. Boss, it's them. These are the guys spinning a web of lies to frame me. Trent clung to his CEO. But the CEO looked at him like he was a diseased rat. and violently shoved him away. At that exact moment, in the quiet maternity ward, beep, beep, beep. The irregular sounds of the heart monitor echoed. My consciousness was sinking to the bottom of the ocean. I'm at my limit. It hurts. I can't breathe. Mia, keep fighting. The baby is in distress. Push. The nurse screamed desperately, but no sound came from my throat. The words my husband had thrown at me, a bottom-tier woman who can't do basic chores, worse than a maid, dead weight bound my heart and body like iron chains. Utterly stripped of my dignity, I had fallen silent in deep despair. I didn't have the energy to fight back or even to curse my fate. But in my fading consciousness, the last words my father had said before leaving the hospital flickered like a tiny light in the dark. Dad will settle everything. I promise you. Dad. Unconsciously, my hand weakly squeezed the bedsheet. In that voiceless silence, I was fighting desperately to ignite the last flame of my life to protect my child. Meanwhile, back in the boardroom, a web of lies, huh? Still running that mouth of yours. Stan the foreman sighed in exasperation and casually tossed a small digital voice recorder onto the mahogany table. With a click, the play button was pressed. Instantly, Trent's arrogant voice echoed through the silent boardroom. Listen to me, you blue-collar monkeys. If you want Apex's contracts, you wire $2,000 into my personal account every month. If you refuse, I can crush your pathetic little company in a second. Useless grunts like you should be grateful just to act as slaves for us elites. Definitive proof of extortion and embezzlement. Trent's CEO and the partners buried their faces in their hands, groaning in despair at the sheer stupidity and brutality. And no, that's deepfake AI audio. These bottom feeders are jealous of my promotion and trying to frame me. Trent waved his hands wildly, desperately denying it. But Stan stared at Trent with eyes as cold as ice. Fake. Then how do you explain the transaction history, showing a total of $500,000 wired precisely into your hidden account, and the bank statements proving you blew it all at strip clubs and on exotic car leases? We already often handed the shadow ledgers over to the FBI and the IRS. Yesterday, the FBI, the IRS, all strength left Trent's legs. He collapsed into a heap on the floor. Looking down at his pathetic form, my father, seated at the head of the table, slowly stood up, and then he delivered the final, most devastating truth to Trent. Trent, you're operating under one massive, irreversible delusion. De-delusion. The contracting firm you looked down upon as bottom-feeding grunts and extorted money from. That firm is an elite direct action subsidiary I set up specifically to monitor the reality of our work sites on the ground. Stan here is actually the executive vice president of the Apex Group. Wah. A hollow, soulless sound escaped Trent's mouth. In other words, you embezzled money from the Apex Group, treated the executive VP of Apex like a slave, and to top it all off, you called the daughter of the Apex chairman a piece of trash, worse than a maid, and demanded a divorce. George's eyes narrowed into slits, completely devoid of mercy. Tell me, Trent, can you imagine what kind of treatment your firm is going to receive from the Apex Group after this? Trent's CEO literally foamed at the mouth and fainted on the spot? But George's pursuit wasn't over. Oh, and one more thing. Let's talk about that time you were so worried about earlier. George glanced down at his luxury watch and smiled a cruel smile. Wait, please, Chairman Mr. Miller. It was all a mistake. It was all my fault, please. In the premium boardroom, all traces of Trent's previous arrogance were gone. He was rubbing his forehead against the floor, groveling on his hands and knees. His bespoke suit was covered in dust, and the voice he squeezed out was pathetic and trembling. A mistake. Just hours ago, you called your wife a maid and insulted me as white trash garbage. You dragged the Apex name through the mud and embezzled massive amounts of money. Where exactly is there room for a mistake in any of that? My father's voice stabbed into Trent's back like a cold blade. George sat back down, looking at Trent with the same chilling indifference one might look at a pebble on the side of the road. It was the stress of the job, the pressure to succeed in this pitch made me snap. I really do love Mia. She can't survive without me. Love her. You've got some nerve saying that. George sighed in disgust. At that moment, the smartphone in Trent's pocket began to ring violently. It was his latest model iPhone, the one he used for business. Clinging to it like a lifeline, Trent looked at the screen. A flood of notifications poured in from his firm's HR department, his bank, and a dozen missed calls from his own mother. What? What is this? What's going on? As Trent fumbled with his phone with shaking fingers, George spoke calmly. Your firm has already received our formal notice of severed ties along with a complete dossier of your fraud. And of course the audio data of the emotional abuse you inflicted on Mia. The little castle of lies you built as an elite has already been completely obliterated. Ah. Trent's face went from pale to ghostly white. The notifications on his screen were brutal. Notice of termination. Temporary freeze on bank accounts. IRS raid at family residence. When the true power of the Apex Group chairman moved, Trent's entire world was dismantled in a matter of minutes. My life. My career as a Wall Street elite ruined. By a single old carpenter, Trent's true colors leaked out again. Even to the bitter end, he viewed George and me as inferior beings. He snapped, pounding his fists on the floor. Screw you. This is your fault. You set me up by hiding who you were. If Mia had just served me properly, this never would have happened. This is all that bitch's fault. The moment those words left his mouth, everyone in the boardroom froze. Even the conscious partners from Trent's firm looked at him not with anger but with absolute disgusted pity. The man was beyond saving. Meanwhile, at that very moment, the delivery room was enveloped in an unprecedented, despairing silence. Mia, Mia, the nurse's frantic voice faded further and further away. My consciousness was no longer in this world. I was sinking alone into a place like the bottom of a deep, dark sea. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't even feel the pain ripping my body apart anymore. All I felt was a cold wind blowing through a massive hole in my heart. Maybe it's fine. I'm just a useless maid anyway. Trent's verbal abuse looped in my ears like auditory hallucinations. Driven to the limit by stress and rejected by the husband I loved, my soul had gone completely silent. I didn't even have the willpower to keep my body alive. Doctor heart rates for both mother and child are dropping into the critical zone. The warning alarms blared endlessly. The flame of my life was about to be snuffed out. I couldn't remember my father waiting outside, nor could I find the strength to think about my baby suffering inside me. I just wanted to quietly disappear into the dark. In the boardroom, Trent was laughing hysterically. Ahaha! That's right, Mia. Let me call Mia. She does whatever I tell her to. If Mia says she forgives me, the chairman will have to back off. Put Mia on the phone. Still on the floor, Trent reached out toward George's legs. But George ruthlessly stomped down on Trent's hand with his leather shoe. Put Mia on the phone. The calm demeanor George had maintained vanished entirely. What replaced it was the murderous aura of a father whose beloved daughter had been pushed to the brink of death. Thanks to that phone call you made to the hospital, Mia is currently hovering between life and death. If anything happens to my daughter or my grandchild. George hauled Trent up by the collar with unbelievable strength. He whispered into Trent's ear in a voice that sounded like it echoed from the depths of hell. Burn this into your brain. The destruction of your life up to this point is just the appetizer. Just then, George's smartphone buzzed sharply. An emergency call from the hospital. George's face changed instantly. What? Her condition crashed. George's roar echoed through the boardroom. The tense atmosphere spiked again. Through the speaker of George's phone, the frantic voice of an older man could be heard. I am so sorry, Chairman. Due to extreme psychological stress, Mia has fallen into a critical state. The heart rates of both the mother and the fetus are plummeting. The caller was the chief of medicine at Manhattan General. That hospital, too, had been established through a massive endowment from the Apex Group. The man on the phone was one of the nation's top doctors and a longtime confidant of George's. Fix it. Assemble the top surgical team immediately. Why, yes, sir, we are prepped, but the patient has completely lost the will to live. Right then, Trent, still slumped on the floor, let out a sudden, insane burst of laughter. Ah ha ha ha, I get it now. Trent looked up, pointing a bloodshot eye at George. Hey, don't make me laugh, Mr. Miller. She really was a defective product, wasn't she? Almost dying just from having a kid. What kind of weak, useless body does she have? The sheer cruelty of his words froze the room. Even his own executives stared at him like he was a monster. But Trent, completely unhinged, couldn't stop. I mean, seriously. I was going to bless her with my elite genetics, and she's bailing halfway through. She really is a defective wife, worse than a maid. It's better off if that bottom-feeding trash just dies. Saves me alimony, and my record stays clean. I'll just remarry a younger, healthier, real woman who actually deserves to be the apex heiress. A man talking about his own desires and status, while his wife teetered on the edge of death, a demon wearing human skin. Trent. George's voice bypassed anger entirely, radiating absolute zero cold. He slowly walked over, grabbed Trent by the collar, and effortlessly hoisted him into the air. Did you forget the vow you made to me that day, V-vow? Mia was born frail. After my wife died young, I raised Mia as a single father, vowing to protect her even if it cost me my life. The flames of relentless fury burned in George's eyes. When you came to ask for her hand 3 years ago, I told you everything. I told you she was frail. I asked if you were prepared to protect her no matter what. You got down on your knees in the pouring rain and cried, begging me, saying, "I will trade my life to love and protect Mia forever." Trent's face cramped. He knew. He had known she was physically delicate, that childbirth would be much harder on her than on an average person. His tearful, desperate plea back then was nothing but a calculated, filthy performance to secure a docile, obedient wife to boost his image as an elite family man. You knew she was weak, and yet you worked her like a slave while she was pregnant, and while she was in labor, you called her garbage. You are the one murdering. Mia George's roar was like thunder. Trent, terrified, but still stubbornly refusing to accept blame, shrieked, "Circumstances change. A promise is void if things change. She's the one dying of shock. It's not my fault." At that moment, the chief of medicine's desperate scream blasted from George's phone. Chairman Nomia's consciousness has completely faded. In the delivery room, a terrifying silence reigned. While doctors and nurses rushed around frantically, I lay on the bed like a puppet with its strings cut, my eyes weakly closed. There was no pain, no sorrow. Even the cruel voice of my husband that had been echoing in my head had faded away. "Dad, I'm sorry. My mind sank completely into the dark. No matter how many times the doctor called my name, not a single breath escaped my lips. My total silence deepened the despair in the room. Charge the paddles. Vitals are dropping. The monitors began to flatline. The flame of my life was flickering, ready to burn out. And then, BUH! A merciless, sterile electronic tone flatlined. Silence. It was the sound signaling that my heart had completely stopped beating. Mia. Hearing that sound over the phone, George dropped his smartphone in shock. Clatter. The despairing alarm continued to ring from the phone on the floor. Seeing this, an ugly smile of pure joy spread across Trent's face. "Ah ha ha, she's dead. The useless bitch actually died. I'm free." The sound of his beloved daughter's death, accompanied by the vile laughter of this despicable man. But just a few minutes later, this man would see true hell. The greatest, most unimaginable reversal, backed by the full might of the Apex Group, was about to begin. "Ah ha ha ha, this is rich, to think she'd actually die." While the flatline BEEP continued to ring, Trent's manic laughter echoed eerily in the boardroom. "Hey boss, did you see? Just like I said, she was the ultimate defective product. Couldn't clean, couldn't even pop out a kid. Ah, now I can go back to being a bachelor without any baggage. This is the best." Trent's face was flushed with joy as he slammed his hands against the marble floor, cackling wildly. His wife and child might have just died, but the only thing in this man's head was his own self-preservation and pathetic pride. "Oh, Mr. Miller, or should I say, Mr. Chairman, it's a shame your daughter was defective. But hey, this means we can settle this without any messy divorce paperwork or splitting assets. We both got lucky. I'll go find a real healthy woman who's actually fit for an elite like me." The sheer breathtaking cruelty of his words made his own executives physically nauseous. They covered their mouths and looked away. In the center of the room, George stood perfectly still, staring at the dropped phone. His shoulders were shaking slightly. "Oh, are you crying, old man? I get you're sad your kid died, but it's karma. It's divine punishment for trying to deceive a Wall Street elite." Trent pointed triumphantly at George. Right at that moment, clear shocking, the doctor's urgent roar erupted from the speaker of the dropped phone. Thump. The heavy, blunt sound of a defibrillator discharging came through the line. They were desperately attempting to restart a stopped heart. But the monitor continued its despairing flatline. "Dad. Dad." At the bottom of the deep darkness, my consciousness was completely detached from the world. No light, no sound. Perfect silence was wrapping gently around my soul. No one would call me trash anymore. I wouldn't have to endure pain anymore. How easy it would be to just sleep like this forever. But as I was sinking into the abyss, I felt someone grip my hand, tightly. "Mia, come back, the chairman. Your father is waiting for you," the chief of medicine's soul-shattering scream. Trent, who had been at the peak of his euphoria, saw his smile twitch and freeze. The flat electronic tones suddenly began to hammer out a powerful rhythmic beat. Beep, beep, beep. Heartbeat returning, pulses back, the mother has stabilized, and the very next second, shattering the heavy air of the boardroom completely, an incredibly loud, powerful cry of life burst from the speaker. Wah, wah. It was undeniably the cry of a newborn baby. The absolute tenacity of Manhattan General's top medical team, combined with George's prayers, had dragged Mia's life and a brand new life back from the abyss. Why? Why is she alive? Trent clutched his head with both hands glaring at the smartphone in disbelief. The perfect, convenient scenario he had mapped out in his head crumbled to dust. Impossible. That defective product came back to life. It's a lie. It has to be a lie. Panicking, Trent scrambled backward. Just then, George, who had been looking down slowly, raised his head. There was not a hint of sorrow left on his face. Knowing his daughter and grandchild were safe, the final restraint on his absolute, unadulterated fury was lifted. He wore the face of an executioner. Too bad, Trent George's voice vibrated through the room like an earthquake. Mia lived, and she safely delivered my grandchild. Which means you've avoided becoming a murderer who killed his own wife. You should be eternally grateful. Hit by the terrifying bloodlust radiating from George Trent's legs gave out completely. Now your selfish little fantasy is over. It's time for you to taste real waking hell. George snapped his fingers. The heavy boardroom doors were violently thrown open from the outside. Trent, standing there, was a person Trent never expected to see. Her hair a mess, her face completely soaked in tears and snot. It was an older woman. Trent's own mother. Mom. What are you doing in New York? Trent screamed, his eyes bugging out. Standing behind his mother were several stern-faced FBI agents. Because of you. Because of you. The house, the land, everything was seized. Why did you mess with the Apex Group's money? You. Ungrateful son. Seized. The feds raided the house. Your father collapsed from the shock and was taken away. In an ambulance. What were you thinking? We got served with massive lawsuits. We're finished. His mother wailed, rushing to Trent and grabbing his lapels, sobbing uncontrollably. Trent, unable to process the situation, just opened and closed his mouth. Feds. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm an elite. I told you, George said coldly, looking down at the pathetic man on the floor. Your destruction had only just begun. Compared to the despair you inflicted on Mia, this is just a parlor trick. The FBI agents approached Trent, the clack of handcuffs ringing out. He had lost everything and had nowhere to run. But George was about to deliver the final, most devastating blow to push him over the edge. Let go, don't touch me, I'm an elite executive, I'm not some trash like this woman. Trent violently kicked away his crying mother and shoved at the agents trying to cuff him. Looking down at his mother, who had collapsed on the floor, crying, "What is wrong with you?" Trent spat in rage. Everyone is dragging me down. Chairman, don't be fooled. I climbed to the top of this firm purely on my own merit. I'm a true elite. My brain is built entirely different from that useless, incompetent Mia. Completely cornered yet still clinging to his pathetic pride as an elite, continuing to insult his wife. Seeing this hideous display, George let out a deep sigh and slowly shook his head, still spouting that nonsense. You really are beyond saving. Shifted his cold gaze to the CEO of Trent's firm. Please, tell this pathetic man the truth about where he really stands. Yes, Chairman. The CEO bowed deeply, then stepped toward Trent. His eyes were filled with absolute contempt, as if looking at an insect. Did you really think you climbed the ranks here based on your own talent? Did you honestly believe that? Obviously. Because of my flawless pitch skills and unparalleled networking, don't make me laugh. The CEO's roar shook the room. You scored at the absolute bottom of our firm's hiring exams. You failed the written test and you failed the interviews. What Trent's face went dead white. When Chairman Miller learned you were dating Mia, he wanted to give you the confidence to provide for a family. In exchange for a massive anonymous endowment to the firm, he asked us to hire you as a special favor. And that's not all. Those massive contracts you always bragged about closing. Every single one of them was funneled to you by the Apex Group through dummy corporations to artificially inflate your numbers. Liar. Not a single piece of business you brought in since you joined this firm was earned by your own merit. You aren't an elite. You're dead weight. You were literally the most incompetent person in this building. This was the ultimate truth that completely annihilated Trent's life. He was nothing but a clown dancing on the palm of the blue-collar tradesman he had so deeply despised, allowed to play pretend at being an elite. That was Trent's true identity. Meanwhile, in a quiet, private hospital room, having miraculously returned from the brink of death, I had the oxygen mask removed and was holding my tiny baby to my chest. Wah! Wah! The baby cried with incredible strength, Feeling the small, undeniable warmth of life, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. Just hours ago, my husband had called me garbage worse than a maid. But now, no words of hatred for him left my mouth. The precious life in my arms proved my worth as a human being. Anger toward that man wasn't even worth my energy anymore. I held my child in a deep, profound silence. It wasn't a silence of despair. It was the silence of resolve, the resolve to completely cut ties with the past and live strongly as a mother. Back in the boardroom. Liar, liar, it's a lie. I'm not bottom tier. I'm not worse than Mia. I'll never accept this. His identity entirely pulverized. Trent clawed at his own face like a madman. It's her fault. She hid that she was the apex heiress to test me. She ruined my life. You all set me up. Completely unhinged, Trent snatched a heavy metal letter opener off the conference table. I'll kill you, you old bastard. With bloodshot eyes, he charged straight for George. Look out, the executive screamed. But just before the blade could reach George, you never learn, do you? Wham! A devastating roundhouse kick exploded into Trent's face. His body flew backwards like a rag doll, skidding several feet across the floor. The letter opener clattered uselessly against the wall. Don't you dare point your filthy hands at our chairman. Looking down coldly at the bleeding, groveling Trent, the man who had stood as George's shield was someone completely unexpected. But it was someone Trent could never defy. Kevin, why the hell are you here? The young man who had executed the flawless kick to protect George was Kevin, the 22-year-old useless temp worker from Trent's department. The kid Trent constantly ordered. Around to make coffee and do copies. Panicking, spitting blood from his split lip, Trent shrieked, Are you kidding me? You're a high school-educated temp who can't even use Excel. Did you suck up to the chairman too? You think you can lay hands on an elite like me and get away with it? Trent's insults only grew more. Hysterical. Bottom-feeding trash like you should be licking my shoes. A loser who belongs with my useless wife has no right to defy me. Hearing this, Kevin sighed in exasperation and took off his cheap, thick-rimmed glasses. He brushed his hair back and the timid, clumsy demeanor vanished entirely. He transformed into the sharp, polished image of a true top-tier professional. You really are a shallow man, Trent. Or should I say, suspect Trent. Kevin's fluent, icy tone made Trent's eyes bulge. A high school-educated temp. That was just a cover to keep you off guard. My actual title is Special Counsel for the Apex Group Legal Department and Chairman Miller's personal bodyguard. A lawyer bodyguard. On the chairman's orders, I infiltrated your department 6 months ago. I documented everything from up close, the evidence of your embezzlement, your workplace harassment, and most importantly, the evidence of your emotional abuse toward Mia. Because you constantly forced your grunt work on me while insulting me, it was incredibly easy to access the hidden data on your computer. The last ray of hope vanished from Trent's eyes. The person at the very bottom of the totem pole, the one he looked down on and used as a stress relief punching bag, was actually the ultimate watchdog holding the noose around his neck. It was a total, complete reversal. Trent's footing had completely collapsed into a bottomless pit. In the quiet hospital room, Mia, it's Chairman Miller calling. George's secretary gently handed me a smartphone. From the screen, I could faintly hear the commotion in the boardroom. Mia, can you hear me? It's all over. That man is being handed over to the FBI right now. My father's voice was gentle yet filled with unwavering resolve. And from behind him, I could hear Trent's pathetic begging voice. Mia, I was wrong. Please tell them not to arrest me. Beg the chairman for me. Just hours ago, he called me garbage. When I almost died, he cheered. But the moment he was crushed by true power, he flipped completely and begged his wife for salvation. His shamelessness was so profound I felt nothing but pity. Mia, do you have any last words you want to say to him? The secretary asked considerately. I slowly shook my head. Touching the warm cheek of my sleeping baby, I turned away from the phone. I didn't utter a single word. He wasn't worth cursing. He wasn't worth forgiving. My absolute silence was my final, eternal goodbye to him. Realizing what my silence meant, my father simply said, I understand, and mercilessly cut the call. Mia, why aren't you saying anything? As the dial tone hummed, Trent slammed his fists into the floor and screamed. The realization that he had been completely ignored and abandoned by his wife finally shattered his paper-thin pride. Too bad. Mia has already completely erased you from her existence, George said coldly. The waiting FBI agents finally hauled Trent to his feet. Click. The cold steel of the handcuffs locked around his wrists. Let go, no, I'm an elite. If I get arrested, my life is over. Riley, that's right, Riley. Trent began screaming a woman's name like a maniac. I still have a woman who actually loves me. She's younger and way hotter than Mia, and she knows my true worth. Once I marry Riley, I'll show all of you. Clinging to his twisted hope, he screamed, the name of his mistress. Watching his hideous display, George let out a small laugh through his nose. Riley, huh? You really are a clown to the bitter end. At that moment, the heavy doors opened one last time. Trent, stop it. It's pathetic. Standing there was the young, beautiful woman Trent had just called for his mistress Riley. Riley, you came. Tell these guys. Tell them I'm a real elite. Seeing her as a ray of hope, Trent stumbled toward her in his handcuffs. But the words that left Riley's mouth were the final, unimaginable blow that sent Trent to the very bottom of hell. Good work, Trent, but your little elite roleplay is over. Riley spoke with freezing detachment. Trent stared at her in disbelief. What? What are you saying? We promised to start a new life together. Call a lawyer. Your dad is an executive at a big pharma company, right? Trent desperately tried to cling to her, but Riley stepped back as if avoiding a cockroach. She turned to George and bowed deeply. Chairman, apologies for the delay. Undercover assignment complete. Wah. A short wheezing sound escaped Trent's throat. George nodded in satisfaction and looked down at the despairing Trent. Allow me to introduce her. She is the lead investigator for the Apex Group's internal audit division. And my adopted daughter. Investigator. A year ago, when you started neglecting Mia, I already suspected it. A man like you, desperate to validate his own worth, always seeks out another woman. So, I sent her in. The passwords to your offshore accounts, the photographic evidence of your infidelity, she got all of it directly from you, under the guise of proof of your love. Flashbacks of his sweet moments with Riley flooded Trent's mind. I want to hear more about your work, Trent. Since you're such an elite, you must have secret accounts, right? So cool. Every time she praised him, his ego inflated and he willingly leaked highly confidential information. Trent slammed his head against the floor, screaming at his own unfathomable stupidity. The woman he thought loved him was nothing but an assassin orchestrating his downfall. Too bad, Trent George said, delivering the final rites to Trent's hollow life. Everyone around you, including the people you looked down on as bottom feeders, were true professionals moving on my orders. You never had a single thing you earned with your own power. Take him away. Spend the rest of your life in federal prison, regretting what you've done. No, let go. I'm not finished, Riley. Please tell me it's a lie. Help me, Trent screamed like a madman, but he was dragged out of the boardroom by the agents. The sound of the heavy mahogany doors clicking shut marked the absolute end of Trent's life, as an elite and as a functioning member of society. A few minutes later, Trent's firm went effectively bankrupt, due to the severed contracts with Apex and the liability for his embezzlement. His prized Manhattan penthouse and luxury cars were all seized. All that remained for him were massive debts and a felony record. A quiet evening at the hospital. Excuse us. The door to my private room opened gently, and my father, Riley, and Kevin walked in. I sat up in bed, greeting them with a calm smile. Are you feeling all right, Mia? My father, whose expression had been like a demon's earlier, now wore the face of a gentle, almost tearful dad as he rushed to my side. Dad, thank you. I'm okay now. For the first time in this long battle, I spoke with a clear, steady voice. The protagonist's silence was finally broken. I'm so sorry, Mia. I wish we could have saved you sooner, Riley said, offering a heartfelt apology. It's okay. Because you were there, Riley, I was able to see exactly who that man really was. I'm grateful. I looked down at the baby, sleeping peacefully beside me. Not a millimeter of Trent existed in my heart anymore. My chest was filled only with hope for the new future about to begin. All right, Mia. The paperwork for your name change and the new birth certificate are ready. You never have to be tied to that man again. My father handed me the documents that guaranteed a new life for me and my child. I nodded strongly and hugged my new baby tight. Making it through the darkness, the true dawn of our happiness was just beginning. 3 months have passed since the stormy day of delivery. Outside the window, a clear blue sky stretched out and a soft, early summer breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. Kicking his arms and legs energetically in his crib is my beloved son Leo. My dad and I chose the name, hoping he would grow up brave and strong like a lion shining brightly like the sun. Just looking at his chubby cheeks and pure eyes makes the horrific memories of the past feel like a distant, fading dream. I don't live in a high-rise Manhattan condo anymore. I live upstate in a beautiful, warm, custom-built wooden home that my father George built with his own hands. There are no luxury designer goods to fake my status, and there is no tense silence from walking on eggshells around a husband. All that exists here is the smell of good food and peaceful laughter. I heard rumors about what happened to Trent. Facing federal charges for extortion, embezzlement, and massive civil suits, he literally lost everything. Stripped of his only identity, his status as an elite, he reportedly sits in his prison cell, refusing to admit his faults, muttering to himself that everyone set him up. His parents lost their home to pay off his debts, and his mother, who used to insult me alongside him, now lives a quiet, impoverished life in a tiny rental. But it has nothing to do with me anymore. The words he threw at me, white trash Maid, no longer hurt my heart. Now they just sound like the pathetic screams of a sad man who could only judge people by their job titles and status. Mia, is Leo awake? Look, Grandpa made him a special rattle. Hearing footsteps on the stairs, my dad walked into the room. In his hand was a beautifully polished wooden rattle. When Leo grabbed it, it made a gentle, soothing clack-clack sound that warmed the heart. Thank you, Dad. Look, Leo, Grandpa made you a treasure. I picked Leo up and sat next to my father. My dad had hidden his true identity just to protect me. I always thought I was just the daughter of an ordinary contractor, but I realize now that what my father was truly proud of wasn't his title as chairman of the Apex Group. It was his tradesman's soul, his ability to build solid foundations and protect his family with his own calloused hands. Dad, I'm sorry I kept quiet for so long. About everything Trent was saying to me. I carried it all alone, and honestly, I was just so scared. I finally voiced the last lingering regret in my heart. Just like he did that day in the hospital, my father gently stroked my head with his warm hand. It's okay, Mia. You're just too kind-hearted. But remember this, there is no upper or lower class of people. There are only people who live with integrity, and people who succumb to their greed and step on others. That's the only difference. His words soaked deeply into my heart. You put your life on the line to bring Leo into this world. That is a far greater, more monumental achievement than any $100 million pitch or building any skyscraper. The man who called you a maid was just a fool who will never understand true value. Oh, Dad. Large tears spilled from my eyes. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy at having my existence and my life affirmed from the bottom of my heart. My silence in the past was a way to suppress myself. But from now on, my voice will be used to protect myself and my son and to express my love. All right, let's get dinner going. Kevin and Riley are driving up from the city today. They said they couldn't wait to see you and Leo. Haha, it's going to be loud tonight. I wiped my tears and stood up with a smile. Kevin and Riley have become precious friends who still come to visit us. What we gained wasn't a fake social status. It was the true wealth of genuine bonds of people who trust and help each other. Outside the window, the evening sky was beginning to glow orange. It was a completely different color from the despairing dawn I had seen in that delivery room. It was a beautiful color full of hope for tomorrow. I hugged Leo tightly and quietly made a vow in my heart. Leo, Mommy isn't going to lose to anything ever again. Just like Grandpa taught us, we're going to walk our own path straight and true. The second chapter of my life has just begun. Toward a bright, shining future that no one can ever tarnish, I take a powerful step forward.